housing markets within Hendry County. So we have a very packed presentation in front of you. I'll yield the floor to Ms. Margaret Embledge, Planning and Community Development Director, for the rest of the remainder of the program.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Commissioners, we have a lot of information, as Charles had mentioned, and but we think it's the information that you've been asking for in this past year. And what we will do is we'll start off where we left off at the last housing workshop. Ms. Sabrina Gadsden will continue a presentation on the existing Hendry County programs, and then we'll get into some of the other efforts that staff has been working on in the last few months. And I will specifically go through what our housing availability is based on a few resources. And then we can talk about next steps and get into a board discussion and get your direction. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Sabrina.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Go ahead.
We're going to start off with, thank you, our Section 8 rental vouchers. When you go through it, it says, next. What is it? It is a housing assistance program that pays all or portion of a tenant's rent or utilities. The main portion of the Section 8 is the voucher program. There's two components to the voucher program. One is the project-based and the other is tenant-based. The project-based is a program that's based on a specific number of houses that a housing authority may own. An example of a project-based voucher here in Hendry County would be Harlem Gardens. That would be an example of what a project-based voucher would be. Then we have the tenant-based, which is what the Hendry County Housing Authority, what we primarily deal with is with a voucher that's given to individual families to be able to find housing here in Hendry County. The criteria is that it's based upon the total income and the assets of a household. It must be within the 40% of the income limits, and most households pay 30% of their adjusted income for Section 8 housing. We typically try not to have a family that go over 30%. We have approximately 43 vouchers here in Hendry County. Of those vouchers, 86% of those vouchers are in use. 6 are port-ins, and port-ins are families that has a voucher in another area and decided they wanted to live in Hendry County. So they would bring their voucher over here to Hendry County, and we would supervise their voucher. However, we will bill their housing authority for us supervising their voucher. The same thing, we have 3 port-outs, which is families that has a Hendry County voucher but decided to move in another area, and those housing authorities will either bill us or absorb those clients into their voucher program. We opened up this Section 8 application process on July the 23rd and closed it August the 5th of last year. We received 173 applications, and of those 173 applications, 50 names were selected and placed on a waiting list. And anybody have any questions on Section 8?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I'm going to wait till you go through your whole thing, and I'll come back to it. Is that okay?
I'm through.
That's your whole presentation for today?
No. For Section 8.
No, I'm going to wait till you get done with everything, and I'll come
Okay.
back.
Can those 50 apply the next go-around, or do they stay on the sheet?
They will stay on that list until their name is called, or if I send out a letter, and if they do not respond to my letter, then they're automatically dropped off, and then we will select some more individuals to go on to the list.
Okay.
Next, we have up our follow-up questions that was asked of me from our previous workshop. You asked how many homes were site-built using SHIP funds. 7 homes were site-built. How many homes using SHIP funds were manufactured homes? None. Are we able to use a formula based on current market rates or established market values? According to Florida Housing, they said, no, we cannot do that. The only thing we can do is once we have our AirHap, we put an exact amount of money in our AirHap. However, which way we want to choose to be able to come up with that exact amount, it's up to the county. And each year we can change it. It's just a matter of us going through the process of getting it approved by the board as well as the Florida Housing. And are we able to change the award amount for rehabs from $30,000 to $40,000? Yes. Again, it's just a matter of us following the procedure on changing it and getting it approved. We have already completed one rehab for SHIP. It was in Clewiston. We have one rehab where we're halfway finished. We put out a bid for 7 additional homes in April. We're looking at the down payment process right now. We've done a down payment orientation in March, on March the 28th and the 29th. Approximately 18 people attended. The down payment assistance, the applications can be picked up starting this Friday, where clients can be able to come into the Clewiston as well as the LaBelle office and pick up the applications to be able to get down payment assistance.
So how much is the down payment? Is it based on
It's based upon the income.
income?
Yes, sir. For moderate income, it would be $10,000. For very low income, it's $30,000. For low income, it's $20,000.
Are those national standards or state standards, or how you arrive at their very low?
Those are HUD limits that they have, the income limits, and it tells us if you fall within a certain income limit, whether or not you're very low, or moderate.
Is it based on 2 incomes or 1, or is the household?
Household income.
And then there's formularies depending on how many children and or
It
dependents.
depends on the number of people in the household and plus that number of the amount of income.
Is that a difficult verification process? Like if I say I have 11 people under my home, and you know I just juiced the books to get the $40,000 or the $30,000, whatever the largest one is. How do we go about verifying that?
You have to bring in all of your birth certificates as well as the Social Security cards, and to verify that that person is your child in your household.
Yes, ma'am.
As well as your tax returns.
Get 'em.
So the tax return would be the kicker.
That's the additional stuff.
Because when I coached college football, we lied a lot to get a bigger Pell Grant.
Well, evidently there was some loopholes, so that's
Yeah.
why the tax part came in, because there was some loopholes.
And I think it was 20% of the FAFSAs that we turned in got selected for verification. It was a nightmare. But we found ways around that too. So get them babies a scholarship.
Hendrick County was approved for additional $150,000 for SHIP funds for disaster assistance. And of course, we have $750,000 for CDBG grant funding.
The $750,000, Mr. Chairman, the $750,000 approval for residential rehabilitation grant status, is that a 1 fiscal year? How many days do you have to spend that? Or is it awarded on a 1-year cycle? Can you give me a little bit more detail on that?
I don't think it's awarded on a 1-year cycle. It's awarded over a 3-year period. We have 3 years in which to spend it. What we're looking at doing this year is to demo and replace. That's usually what we use our CDBG funding for.
But there is a cap on how much you can spend
Per
on the demo and
person.
replace.
Yes, $80,000. That is the cap that we've had for CDBG is $80,000.
Through our acronym being LHAP, that was blessed by the FHFC.
Yes.
But you're telling us that we could potentially adjust that if we look at the averages and see that if we took that and that 80,000 wasn't really doing that much, we could probably tweak that.
Yes.
Okay.
All of our AirHaps can be adjusted according to our needs we have in the county. Again, it's just a matter of us rewriting the AirHap, getting your approval, and then getting the Florida Housing approval for those changes.
Well, the 7 that went out to bid on April 12th,
Mm-hmm.
Was that a 30-day, or have they already been turned around and sent back to you
No, they will be this week.
this week?
Mm-hmm.
So the 750 is a one-time grant?
Yes.
But help me understand then, so the applications now is not the one you're gonna use for this, is the applications from the year before?
The application now
The,
for
the
what?
funds now that is being used for the prior years, the ones that was already on the list. The list that comes out now
Okay.
is for the
First, explain to me which funding are you talking,
Okay,
because
we-
we're talking about SHIP and CDBG.
CDBG.
Okay.
Ms. Bird, are you talking about the 750?
The CDBG, because what happens is there's already a list accumulated
Yes, ma'am.
from the prior year, am I right? And that money is being used for those people that's already on the application.
Okay.
And of that, and Ms. Bird, I appreciate the questioning. Can you go back to the previous page? Is it the 173 applications that were received?
That's section 8.
That's okay. That has nothing to do
Nothing
with
to do
SHIP.
with
Okay.
173 applications was for section 8,
Okay. Now take all that and put it on the shelf, is what you just said.
pretty much.
Now we're at CDBG and SHIP funding.
Okay.
Hendry County has $750,000 in a pot of money for CDBG, right, Ms. Bird? And then we have another separate pot of money of $150K for SHIP housing
The $150,000 is additional
on top
funding
of.
on top of for disaster assistance.
Okay, just for disaster
This
assistance.
for disaster assistance.
Ma'am, did that only come to us because of Hurricane Irma?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
That's 9?
Right at 900 grand. Yes, sir. But, Ms. Bird, your question was, there's a list of applicants that exist today that are in the queue, so to speak, for CDBG funding recipient.
So
Okay,
that's-
let me explain about that.
Please do.
When we was doing this SHIP rehabs, there was a number of families that, for whatever reason, their home cost more than what we allowed in SHIP funding. So we could not rehab their homes using SHIP funds. What we encouraged them to do is to switch over to CDBG. So once the CDBG funding come out, they can then apply through CDBG to be able to get the rehabs that they need to have done to their home using CDBG funds, which of course, because it's $80,000 versus $30,000.
So
Okay.
they don't have to do another application.
They do.
They do.
They do.
Do
Because
they get
SHIP
preferential?
application is completely different from
So would they be
CDBG.
contacted, those people that was on that list?
They should be contacted.
Because you know what list I'm talking about, and who, I don't want to call names, but you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't,
But
Mr. Chair, I don't know.
it will be posted, all of our funding will be posted in the local papers. So everybody has an opportunity to look at the local papers, see the funding, when they can pick up applications, and when it must be turned in. Once they pick up an application will tell them all the documents we need in order for them to be approved.
So they have to reapply those.
They have to reapply because it's two different funding.
So-
There's an ad out right now for SHIP, isn't there?
There
In the
is
paper.
an ad out for SHIP because that was down payment assistance.
Yes, ma'am.
And I understood that, but my thing of the people that's already have applied, and I know now they're.
They
looking for-
haven't applied. They was told to switch over to a different funding source.
They haven't applied because the application isn't even
Hasn't
open
been
yet?
Open yet.
Okay. For CDBG funding, Ms.
For
Bird.
CDBG funding, they have not applied. What we did, we told them to go and you start looking for the CDBG funding to be able to get the rehabs done for their homes. Because the SHIP funding that we had presently was not enough to be able to cover the rehabs that they had to have done on their homes.
And I just want to make sure that that group of people knows this, you know, for waiting for that period of time
Mhm.
that was unable to get that,
Mhm.
those funds to make sure.
Most of
that-
those people
Yeah.
have been calling me
Okay,
and have been advised of
okay, thank you.
what's to take place.
It's because in the past we was working on it, but then they didn't have the funds.
Okay.
So, you
But
know,
now we
so
have
you
we
can
have funding
understand
sitting in the
why-
queue.
Understand why I asked that question.
All right, let me ask you another question. How many people are we talking about that will potentially make application, and do you have a historical average? Like, will we have 15?
I don't personally have a historical average,
Uh-huh.
because I've only been here for a year.
Okay.
Starting this month, I started in April. so-
Congratulations.
Yes, I made a year. So,
All right.
and survived. and I haven't turned Snow White yet, but that's okay. But I don't have historical information,
Yes, ma'am.
so I can't.
Off of your
really
hip,
readily
what would,
tell
if you had to presume, how many people do you think will apply for that $750,000 pool of money?
Off the top of my head?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking about 20, 25 people.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, about 20, 25 people who's.
That's a
going to-
federal funding source. Yeah. Okay.
So, I don't know how many we can be able to assist, but I'm looking about that many.
Okay.
Just as a quick clarification, it is a federal block grant, so it is subject to certain federal conditions, but the way CDBG funds through the state omnibus, it's considered a state funding level. That's important because if we were ever to get into some other federal funds, say with USDA or USEDA, we could use, sorry for the alphabet soup, but the Community Development Block Grant as a potential state-funded match for a larger federal program, just as cocktail knowledge moving forward.
Also, just in that, what is this rehabilitation? What does it cover? When we're talking about doors, windows, water heaters, what does this cover?
Doors, windows, water heaters, floors, cabinets, bathrooms.
That's the reason I'm asking. If you have $750,000 goes a long way, so I'm just curious what it actually covers. 25 people, that's,
That gets split up quick, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. so,
It get used up really quick because, again, majority of our CDBG funds go towards demo and replacement. There's some homes that we know that is not in really good condition and no one should be living there. So what we use primarily is to demo and then replace their home with a new home.
And it won't take you long to spend that.
No, sir.
But to that effect, though, Mr. Chair, I would say that I don't know if we ought to tweak that, but I think that we should look at maybe either hardening or making a portion of it. First off, I think that we should all agree that we're gonna rotate it through certain neighborhoods. I think that we should say we want to deal with this blight. I think that we should strategically say we want to deal with this blight first, or if it's not a blighted area, I don't know what it is, but we need to look at having a focused effort. Is that legal?
Well, the prior direction of the board and what this grant was based off of was a conversation we had, I believe it was late summer or early fall, where the board was giving direction to staff to look at making a concerted effort in the community of Harlem.
Yeah.
And so this grant is predicated and written off of that priority. So we've targeted a neighborhood to.
That's a wonderful idea. So we all agree on that premise. I think secondly, we should say, I would love, I don't know if y'all like this idea, but I would love to see what does that map look like? Is it 7 homes, in a general vicinity, or is it popcorn throughout the entire community? And then, I'm going to tell you right now, our chairman, he can look at $750,000, and I know we're not supposed to do this from up here. I get that. But guess what? Welcome to the club. Some people have an expertise in certain areas. And I'm not going to tell Mike Swindle how to educate an adult because he'll chew me up and spit me out 7 ways per Sunday. And so Commissioner Wills can look at that and take those gray hairs on the side of his head and apply his knowledge towards we ought to look at maybe tweaking the LHAP and the FHFC to allow it to go to $120,000 for 2 homes. You know what I mean? Or just it may be less homes that we affect, but it may have a greater impact in the grand scheme of things. And then once again, I go back to if we can show a bigger return, Commissioner Byrd, now when we go out and we walk a legislator through and we start to use our energies to lobby and get more of a return, we're able to do more because we can show what we've leveraged already. That's just a thought to kind of twist up the way we've already done it. To your point, saying initially that 30 to 40 grand, you had a pool of applicants that went through for the SHIP process, and you all said that's not going to get you to where you need to be for your end game. You need to apply to this pot of funding. Well, now we need to look at making sure that pot of funding is actually, because when I hear $80,000 for a demo, which is probably on the average $50 to $7,500, $5 to $7,500, and then now I want to go back and I want to actually rebuild at a price per square. I mean, I think our county restrictions were only allowed to build a 450 square foot single family home.
It'd be a little bit.
Is it 600? So that's even then at $20. I mean, you're not going to get so at $60 you've almost utilized it. to the nth of its
You
degree.
couldn't build a very big house.
No.
No.
Well, not only that, really, you're looking to we need to correct the situation rather than put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
By the time we turn around, we're working in a different area. What we've done is the impact was nothing.
Yep.
So we really need to create a scenario where we're actually meeting the need rather than just putting a Band-Aid on it moving forward.
And I think that's what they're doing.
Oh, I agree. That's definitely what she's doing.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, maybe more money in that area.
You know, it might have been that area, but every area must be prioritized, and that's one of the things we talked about with the board. Instead of going in, putting a Band-Aid on it, fixing the roof, and it got a leak on the bottom, you know.
Yeah.
To make sure we don't have to come back and do it again.
That's where we may need to increase that amount, so you actually have the ability to do that, is what we're saying.
So I think you've gone through one cycle. You have 7 homes that just went out for bid. I'm looking forward to when those come back and what you think that the end product is going to look like on that, and then how far will that chew into the 750, or is that another previous
That's
pot?
another previous pot that's
Okay.
SHIP funding.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I
We haven't
thought.
started working on CDBG yet.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Yep.
I will tell you this, on May 24th at 5:30, we will be having our orientation for CDBG.
Will that be a bunch of contractors, or will that be the applicants themselves?
That will be the applicants themselves.
Okay.
And where would this be held at?
It will be held at the Janet B. Taylor Auditorium in Clewiston at 1100 Olympia Avenue.
Do you just do one meeting, ma'am?
Yes.
And you feel that
We'll do
that
just
will
one
meet it?
For CDBG, yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's right, because we're targeting that area.
Yes.
Sorry.
Do you think that cast net is big enough that it catches all? I mean, you'll meet all your applicants and having just that one? No.
Even if you was to have 4 or 5 meetings,
Still
you're going
won't.
to meet all your applicants.
Yes, ma'am.
For whatever reason,
Yeah.
a lot don't attend or.
Apathy reigns supreme. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
And I promise you, I aggravate her enough, so she
Yeah.
got enough to target that, so.
So to be clear, homes outside of Harlem are not eligible?
Not right now for this pool of money, Commissioner Swindle.
Okay.
For this pool of money. Is that for SHIP as well, or just for CDBG?
Just for CDBG?
Yes, SHIP, they would be, Commissioner
Okay.
Swindle.
Okay.
Question?
No, yeah, that answers it. Perfect.
Just to be clear, is that was the directive of the board from that workshop at that time, was to target an area, knock out that area, and then move with the scope of the next round of CDBG fundings to another neighborhood to be identified at that time.
And it's going to be a year by year, so if we're here next year, we're going to move to Felden?
Depends on where the pleasure of the board is, number
Okay.
one, based on the metrics that we have, number two, and our community needs
Right.
score, which goes up and down within the CDBG program, and what the relevant equation will be for our availability of funding. It could be 2 years out, depending on the community needs score. It's just depending on how we get scored by that particular funding agency.
Okay, okay.
So you wouldn't get any money anyway for 3 years, right? 750?
No, the quicker that you close these grants out, the quicker you're back into the evaluation cycle. We have 3 years within the contract agreement to be
We're
able
going
to
to do everything in our
finish it.
power to beat that down
Right.
much faster. Because the quicker we can spend it, Commissioner Harris, the quicker we're able to reapply and get after another pot of funding.
Okay, but you don't know what the pot would be.
Well, CDBG on average is around $750,000 on an award, but then they have the community-based needs scoring that comes into play. So
We shouldn't
with
have-
it being a block grant, it's kind of like thinking of the funds as a big block of cheese. They slice it off based on what your community needs score is per your jurisdiction, and the state then redistributes it back out. The higher your community needs score is, the bigger slice of the cheese you qualify for.
So we shouldn't meet that need.
We should, but it also depends on frequency of funding, how many grants you've gotten over a certain amount of time period. That way they're being fair and equitable in the distribution of the
They can
funds.
see what's going on.
Yes.
Okay.
It's all right. Any other questions? Because we're going to move on to our housing roundtables. We conducted 2 housing roundtables to discuss the gaps and solutions to providing workforce housing. The first roundtable discussion focused on gaps and solutions for workforce housing, and the second focused on buyer financing opportunities. The first roundtable identified 4 obstacles They were financing utilities, affordable land, and affordable housing builders. And we came up with several recommended solutions. Those was funding coordination, credit counseling, high-density development, utilities, availability for high-density development, selling or donating surplus property owned by Hendry County to affordable housing builders, and opportunities on surplus property owned by Hendry County School Board, as well as working with potential donors and trusts, and support development of smaller homes.
So you're going to get into the tiny house business?
If that's going to be to help our affordable housing, if I can be able to get a house that's,
One bedroom?
for me, that would be perfect.
Well, I even think too, Mr. Chair, Mr. Commissioner Harris, I think that you can just look at that smaller footprint of a a two, but it's a very small home.
2 bedroom.
Yeah, and with a little living space that shares the kitchen, kind of like an efficiency looking type site built.
That's better
Still
than
more.
what you got now.
I'd rather have that than mobile homes.
All day long, I would.
Yeah.
Because when Hurricane Irma comes through, that's going to hold up a heck of a lot better. And it's also going to have a return on investment.
Looks better.
The second roundtable discussion centered around buyer financing opportunities. We invited local financial institutions and area financing agencies to come and tell us about their goods and services they offer. And we also talked about coordinating stacked opportunities or stacked resources and open doors for builders coordination with financing resources. This next slide is just a number of the financing entities that came and presented and talked about what they have. The next couple of slides I have here are just the banking institutions and what they offer. They offer 4 types, like Suncoast offer 4 types of mortgage financing programs, and they are the first-time home buyers, the Affordable Home Mortgage Program, the 3-and-3 Right-Time Mortgage Program, as well as the Heroes Mortgage Program. The Heroes Mortgage Program was really interesting because that program is geared toward our essential staff. And that program offers them an opportunity to be able to have no down payment. They have to have good credit, good job history and whatnot, but it offers them the opportunity to be able to get a home loan that is really reasonable.
Is it here essential services, so firemen,
Teachers.
law enforcement, teachers? Do you think that we've done a good enough marketing campaign? If we polled 100 teachers or 100 of those essential services, would 60% of them know about that?
No.
How can we help facilitate that?
I'd be willing 6% don't know about that.
Did you say 6?
I doubt it. I would doubt that.
And then-
That's the reason why we started doing these workshops.
Right.
And so we can gather this information, so we can be able to disseminate this information out to the community so that they are aware that there's the opportunities here for them to be able
Was
to
this
get
every lending institution or just a couple?
This was just a couple.
Is that a federal program or
What's
is this like a FHA? Must be a hero, or is this just an
Might be
individual?
Suncoast specific.
Yeah.
It's
That's,
Suncoast specific.
oh, Suncoast specific. Well, let me ask you a question. I mean, Commissioner Swindle, what do you think off of the hip? How many of our essential services people are not in a home that's owned?
Oh, yeah.
Is it a high number?
70, the school board hires 70 folks a year. So how many of those from out of that?
They're
move
not
in?
buying their first
No,
house.
no. And
What
so there's
they're-
a huge demand there, and that's just school teachers alone.
What they're doing, they're moving out, they're out of town, driving.
A lot of them, that's the only option right now. So yeah, and I would say there's tons of Henry County sheriffs and EMS, especially, that
Good.
there's no housing available and definitely not affordable within their price range.
All right.
Nor do they know about that option.
Well, with that being mentioned in your workshop, that's probably something that would be a plus to get to the school board. They could actually get that out to the teachers that are on staff now. They talk to potential people coming in and out, so That would probably be something where they can network together and get that out to the, two potential teachers, to the ones that are here now. They're looking maybe at the end of the year they're going to do something different.
I need to throw some stuff.
If they have the
away.
information, then maybe maybe that'd be a source to help with.
It looks like the
And one of the,
floorboard of my truck.
and just an FYI, the school board is looking at school board housing. And so, Miami-Dade's doing it, and it's kind of a movement across the nation. And so we're working on that, and there's a lot of talk, a lot of discussion, and we hope to get it off the starting blocks soon. Hint, 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 hint.
So it'd be awesome, Ms. Nelson, if y'all let us know about any of those initiatives that you have. We try to talk to y'all, but it's like it's a giant vacuum over there at the old school board. I don't know why that is. I can't really put my thumb on it. But Mr. Chairman, one thing that I would say is we're top 5 largest employers in the county. School board's number 1 or number 2. I think just I don't know if it's an email blast or what you would like to do, but I think first, so that we don't offend any of our lending institutions, asking them, do you have a program that's equitable or along these lines? And then putting something out through your office that says, these services are available. Because if you add the sheriff and everybody in there, I mean, you've touched a huge portion of the workforce. And Ms. Nelson, I mean, if y'all could get that through y'all's system now, I mean, you're probably talking at 65% of the working body of Hendry County would have been touched and would know about this. And now, if you tell us that creates more traffic, I think we've touched that a little bit and moved the needle, so to speak.
So if somebody qualifies, you build them a house, then they get a better job, want to take off, what happens?
If they receive funding through SHIP, they have to stay in their home for 5 years.
That would have an effect on school teachers because they move so many. They're in and out.
What if they don't? What if?
If they decide to move, then they have to pay us back.
Okay, so you get your money back out of the proceeds that you put in the home. You have some sort of covenant, I'm sure, to get that.
Potentially.
So after the 5 years, it's a different story.
After the 5 years, it's a different story.
Is that where we get the satisfaction of mortgages?
Yes, sir.
That comes
5
across
years
with
is satisfaction mortgage. If it's a CDBG funding, it's 10 years.
We'd give them an incentive to stay 5 years anyway.
Depending on what the volume is and the return on investment to whether their other offer may be.
If it's too much, they just
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah.
It's all about money.
Yes, sir.
I mean, 2 of the jobs that I took, they didn't care what the cost was. They were going to move me. They were going to buy me. That's what it was. So I don't care what program I had set up. They told me, go pick out a house,
And when the program's established, they might not need to go through her.
Yeah.
Just letting them know about the finance that is available. And like you said, some of them didn't even know because I had never heard of the Hero.
Well, it's a relatively new program that they offer. And again, it's for some of those who qualify, may not even need to have a down payment. For Center State Bank, they offer the portfolio, conventional, jumbo, FHA, VA, foreign national, first-time buyer, and the construction loans. They have to meet the county income requirements. Could not have owned a home within the last 3 years. It must meet the qualifying underwriting requirements and must use the home as their primary residence and just complete a home education course prior to the loan closing. Most of this is the same things that SHIP requires as well. So,
Do you mind fast forwarding to Habitat for Humanity basic requirements?
okay.
How many of those? And that's a different pot, obviously, of money.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of those would you say on a yearly basis are we operating in?
Okay. Habitat for Humanity is not me.
Okay.
So I have no idea. I do know that they just held a class in December, and I did speak to someone, and they said they're looking to build 3 to 4 homes in Hendry County this year.
And those obviously you have to hit these guidelines to be able to be in that habitat. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Just a bit of information for that Habitat for Humanity for the
Yes,
last
ma'am.
3 years. They have built, I think it was 7 homes in the last 3 years in Hendry County. And Charles and I just had a meeting with Kitty Green, with the Lee Hendry Habitat for Humanity director, and have had some really good discussion about what their challenges are in Hendry County. And Charles, do you want to talk about it?
Absolutely. So, very productive meeting. Bottom line is, why doesn't Habitat have a greater presence out here? And it's not because their board doesn't desire to be out here. It has more to do with the fundraising ability of donors and sponsors for targeted Hendry County interests. The second piece is qualified applicants that meet the credit counseling criteria. And the third is the availability of land at a reasonable price point. So in summary of which one is the most important, it has to deal with that philanthropic charitable giving arm that starts their process to underwrite the homes as they move forward to be able to get an average home built. It's about $120,000 to $130,000 for a basic Habitat for Humanity home.
So they have their footprint. They're not going to adjust it. They know what square footage they want and what they want it to look like.
Yes, sir. They have 4 kit homes,
Okay.
and depending on the applicant's credit ability is whether or not they could get into one of the lower cost, smaller homes, or whether or not they could get a mortgage for one of the higher end, larger homes,
Whatever they can afford.
based on their 80% of the average annual income, yes.
20% should be going towards housing. Okay, and then, but their applicant process, that wasn't something that was holding them up. And then what about the
To clarify that, though, sir, is that the applicant process, they have plenty of applicants.
they don't have a horse that is donating a significant pot of money that is gearing it towards Hendry region
That's
specific.
one. And the applicants that are coming in that would fit the criteria are still deficient when it comes to their credit rating or their ability to be underwritten for the debt for the mortgage.
Okay.
They don't meet the basic credit score.
Okay.
This just goes to show one size doesn't fit all, and that's why we've brought all this information together, so that because the different programs have different criteria, hopefully one of these will fit the buyer. Charles, you got excited.
I did, because there was one thing I forgot that is very critical to mention, and it's a problem across all of our sectors, is available volunteers in Hendry County to actually serve on a Habitat build. It's one thing, to be very clear, Habitat is not a gift. Habitat is a sweat equity earning, mortgage-based program. It's a hand-up program, not a handout. So with that, the applicants have to put in a certain amount of time on the Habitat build. All of you are very familiar with that. But what you don't see is the army of volunteers from different corporations, charity groups, ministerial communities that are coming in and out of those builds frequently to help that family along.
But you just said y'all are all familiar. I'm not familiar. So I'm assuming that Habitat for Humanity is that herd of humans that I see that are going to a site and helping to actually construct a home. What you're saying is that we do not have that armada of people.
You do not have that armada of philanthropic community. We have a lot of volunteerism. Hendry County is a great community for charitable giving. It's a very generous community. But when it comes to Habitat for Humanity bills, there is not that lineup. They don't have.
Did you just nicely say that we'll stroke a check, but we won't put sweat equity in?
Yes, sir, I did.
Is that because I kind of agree with that? It's the easiest thing to do from a volunteer standpoint. I do it all the time. Is I give cash and say, all right, wish you well.
They want somebody to-
But I got 52 weekends a year. I want to do something that I want to do.
And I personally have served on Habitat for Humanity builds both in Hendry County and in Lee County in the last 2 years. The work is very simply laid out. All you have to do is show up and be able to sling a hammer or paint a wall. They come in kits. They're prefab walls. It's an extremely efficient process. This is not something where you're going in and having to figure out how to frame. The walls are all delivered. It's a very easy process. And I'm not trying to endorse or trying to recruit anybody right now for Habitat, but
It sounds a lot like it.
there's no reason why a person can't go give 5-6 hours on a given Saturday and be done with a very significant amount of work.
Well, why can't, I'm sorry,
They
Commissioner.
used to go through the churches, like our churches went and helped before.
Yes, sir, and apparently the participation rate has dropped off.
All right, let me ask you a question. One of y'all said, or either I read it, that a roadblock to Habitat for Humanity is not having the dirt to build a house. Did I read that, or am I dreaming that?
Yes, sir, it's available space, and that was not part
Where's
of
that
this.
at? I don't see
That was
it.
from our meeting with Kitty Green on Friday this past week, sir. That's knowledge that Ms. Imblage and I secured. It's
And it
not
was
in your
It was in his
presentation.
presentation.
Just
earlier,
read it.
too, about
I
the
just read
workforce-
it.
The workforce housing piece. There was just no,
Okay.
not many available lots.
So once again, doubling down on our efforts, how difficult would it be, Charles, for us to identify in the 2018, 2019 calendar, because we're one quarter through 2018, how difficult would it for us to be to say, Habitat Humanity Board, if we queue up the human effort and we queue up the dirt, would you be able to identify a home in the Harlem community that we could erect? Why couldn't we lay that challenge down?
We could certainly lay that challenge down. Their first response is going to be they need some sort of a corporate gift or fundraising effort from the philanthropic community to help front the funds to construct the house so that it can be then financed. So it's the financing, available volunteers, and then the dirt in order of priority of what the roadblocks are.
Do you mind taking on that burden of finding out what those numbers are and what it would have to be from an underwritten standpoint financially?
Absolutely, I do not mind taking that on. In fact, we're following up with Collier County Habitat for Humanity, I believe Thursday of this week, to cross-compare. And I know that we have the Henry Lee chapter with Ms. Kitty Green, and by no means are we trying to get in a bidding war between the two different groups, but I want to make sure that our criteria is consistent and may make more sense for our southern region that borders along the Collier County line to be a part of the Collier Habitat for Humanity as opposed to the Henry Lee. Just we're working out geography. But then once we get those numbers, I would love to meet with each one of you and also talk to some of our other corporate partners in the community to find out what is a roadblock for giving to Habitat for Humanity. Is there a philosophical difference here? Is there just lack of knowledge? What can we possibly do?
For me, it's complete blissful ignorance. That's what it is for me.
The ones that have been building here has been Port Labelle, because they can get the land cheap.
And we do have a list of surplus lands that we keep maintained at all times, and we have looked at targeted development areas like the 9 blocks we're looking at in Montera as well. And this is something that definitely has legs moving forward, but we've got to get over those first 2 roadblocks to get down to something that's very easy to solve.
Maybe we could get them in Banyan Village.
That's a different conversation, dealing with back taxes and liens.
Well, I would challenge us to Charles. It's April. I hope by June, by the first meeting in June, you can come back with some finite details associated with that. That's my challenge to you, because I think that this is something that we need to look at. And as we get into that fall calendar and the weather starts to get beautiful, how nice would it be to rally, 15, 20 people to a cause to see a home go vertical in a community that needs it and have a family that's ready to move in and be able to shoot. I mean, the beauty of Hendry County, like I say all the time, is that we're not talking about millions of people or hundreds of thousands. We're talking about hundreds of people that we can get them into a gainfully employed situation and put them in a home. It starts to move the needle quickly.
Need help, call Jimmy Carter.
Since we are at this point, I will go to the USDA. The next one we'll talk about is the USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture, and they offer 2 types of loans for home ownership. They are the guaranteed loans and the direct loans.
How many of these do we have right now going on in our county?
The USDA loans, I have no idea. I have referred quite a few people to them, but I don't know where they're at in the process of acquiring the loans.
Well, Chair, I'd like to move to the next one, because if you could give us those facts, that's what I'd like to know. I'd like to see how good a program's actually working. I see all the thing. I mean, a minimum of 640. Mm-hmm. You know how many people that eliminates right out the gate in Hendry County?
Yes.
And people may think a 640 beacon is not that strong, but I know how many people I employ. I know how many 640s are walking around on my staff. So, yeah.
And they will not finance a mobile home, but they will finance other homes. And the thing with the USDA loans, as you can see, is up to 33 years, but they can extend it up to 38 years depending on the circumstances. And then they have the direct loan, which is the principal and interest is subsidized, usually due to the applicant's income. And of course, there's 640 credit score, and they will not finance a mobile home.
Ms. Wilkins, did you want to throw something in there?
Yes, sir, I apologize.
No, you're fine. Come on.
Julie Wilkins, I have spoken with the director of USDA for the loan department, and basically, Hendry County has always been underserved, and its lack of knowledge could be the credit score. But I know, for example, my uncle uses the program. It's very strong building up in Polk County. It is a huge program in Polk County. So it is a good program. It's just a lack of knowledge like a lot of the programs.
Well, I don't even know who the USDA staff are in Henry County.
They're not in
Hendry County, they're in Fort Myers.
North Fort Myers.
North
There you
Fort
go.
Myers.
It'd kind of be like the Early Learning Coalition of Southwest Florida. They got a lot of PhDs working over in Lee. They got none working in Hendry. I ain't mad at them. I'm just saying it's a fact. So.
Well, I will say this, that I have a good working relationship with them, so I have been diverting a lot of
Outstanding.
applicants over there to them so they can be able to look towards getting home ownership and using the USDA funds to be able to get a home. Since we're talking about a lot of them can't get loans because of their credit, we have also extended ourselves out to HORT, which is the Home Ownership Resource Center of Lee County, to help us with our clients and to be able to do credit counseling classes here in Hendry County so that they can work towards getting their credit scores up so they can afford a home. And as you can see, their goal is to work with our local government offices, lenders, real estate agencies, insurance providers, and other nonprofit agencies to offer out their services to help boost the home ownership rate in the greater Fort Myers, Lee, and Hendry County areas. We've just had a class last week, I want to say, Tuesday and Thursday of last week. One was held in Clewiston. We had 10 participants, and on Thursday we had a class here in LaBelle, and we had 10 participants. So the word is getting out there, and the clients are coming in because they realize that they need the help to be able to get their credit scores up to the standard that's needed to be able to purchase a home. HORT provides one-on-one counseling, home ownership, training classes, down payment assistance information, credit report review, credit rebuilding, budget and credit counseling, foreclosure prevention, and home maintenance education to those who desire it. HORT is also a HUD-approved agency to be able to provide the home ownership education class. So if we have anyone who is getting SHIP assistance for down payment assistance, they can go through HORT for that class to be able to get their certificate. And it is an 8-hour class, so. Any questions?
None.
All righty. Turn it over to Ms. Emlich.
And just to add to that discussion, though, so you know, the other lending agencies do offer credit counseling. So this isn't the only opportunity for folks. So when we get the word out and disseminate the information on the different programs, and folks are looking into those programs, they'll get the same opportunities for that credit counseling through them as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ms. Emmons, I do have a couple questions. Let me go back to the very beginning.
Yes.
I didn't ask those questions. The main portion, ma'am, you said, I'm going to be done within 8 minutes with your question and answers as well. On the HUD, you said we had 3 port outs, 6 port ins. They have a voucher from another area, and they bring that into Hendry County. Of the 6 port ins, and there's only 43 vouchers total in the county.
And
the county itself owns. So technically we have 43 plus 6, that's 49. You could technically say 52, but we're not going to get into that. It's a wash. Do you have any idea how many people are actually dwelling in those 43? You understand what I'm saying? The people that are qualifying for that voucher, is that for a family unit?
It is for a family unit, whether or not that family consists of one.
Yes, ma'am. But is there an average? Is there an average?
An average number of people in the household?
Yes, ma'am.
There is no average. I have.
Well, there is, but you don't know what it is.
There is, but I don't know what it is.
And not being critical, I'm just asking. Y'all don't have to verify that, is what I'm saying, right?
Verify the number of people in the house?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir.
You do?
Yes, sir.
So you could give us that report.
Yes.
What I'm driving at is dependency on services.
Okay.
There is going to be a higher correlation of someone that's qualifying for a voucher that is dependent on other services, which then correlates into performance in your K through 12 system or lack thereof, so on and so forth. There are corollaries across the board on these things.
Okay.
And I would just love to know what that volume is.
Okay, I can give it to you.
Okay, and then the next thing I want to ask you, ma'am, you said 86% of the vouchers are in use. So does that mean 14% are being left on the table and we're not utilizing them, or
14% is left on the table, and we're not utilizing them at this current time. One of them is because we had a recent death.
Yes, ma'am.
With a voucher holder, so we have that voucher still available. And another is because we had a voucher holder who had to go into a convalescent home.
Okay.
So.
And one other aspect of that is that we sometimes have challenges of finding landlords.
That would have the facility that would qualify for
Correct.
the HUD housing. Okay. Okay. And Section 8 and the voucher program are completely different into themselves as well.
The voucher program is part of Section 8.
It's part of Section 8. Okay. So Section 8 applications, July 23rd through August 5th, 173 applications were received. That is who qualified for your 43 vouchers.
No, that
Nope.
was the ones who applied for Section 8. That does not necessarily mean they qualified. They
Okay.
applied for
And qualification is based on income,
income and household size.
that formulary.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So you definitely verify that then, depending on what their
Everything-
application looks like.
HUD, everything has to be verified.
Okay. Ms. Bird, you being an educator, you understand what I'm driving at with how nice it would be able to know that and then tie that back to
That's what I was
performance.
going to ask her. Are we doing anything to help them come out? Because I stayed in Harlem Garden. There's nothing wrong with Harlem Garden, but you want to better yourself. Are we doing anything to help them to better themselves and to come out?
Not being
'Cause
disrespectful,
everybody
but I'm
don't
going to say the short
desire-
answer is absolutely
Because
not.
everybody don't desire to be there, but they
Absolutely
don't
not.
have a choice in
And where they're at.
where they're at. So what are we doing? Is there anything we can do to help them help themselves?
I can tell you for myself that I am making my point to always talk to and counsel.
You
and
are. Yeah.
Educate my clients. And right now, I have 2 clients who are going for home ownership at this present time, trying to get off of Section 8 into their own home.
Because there's nothing wrong with having your own, and we need to encourage that. And some people have that fear that they can't, but they can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we need to
Yeah,
help
yeah.
them.
And again, you explain to them, if you can afford to pay $600 in rent.
That's right.
You can get your own mortgage.
$600 into your own mortgage.
Absolutely.
And it's yours.
Yep.
So again, I make it my business to educate my clients about it. Not saying everybody would do that, but I do, because that's just me. I'd rather for you to know than not know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they just don't know to proceed or to step, and they don't have that boldness to come out and act.
And
Or
then it's when you start encouraging
yeah,
them.
and sometimes we need encouragement. You know, it doesn't matter. We just need it. So
And to follow up on Commissioner Turner's question, as you, hopefully, Commissioner Turner, are you asking to get that data?
I am, because
Okay.
I think it would be difficult, Commissioner Swindle, and I don't think this is a report that'll be turned around in the next 3 to 6 months. But I think within a year we can. Well, I think y'all may have it, Ms. Embledge, but our ability to take it and actually do something with it and
That's
prepare a
gonna be-
game plan on what we're going to do is almost going to be impossible at this time.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to look at it, utilize it, and marinate on it, because there is a corollary. And now, how do we put that into momentum is a discussion to start having, because like you said, Ms. Bird, there's so many people that are they don't understand. They're not emboldened enough to think that they can have home ownership. You're talking to a handful of people, but now how can we tweak that? And now you go 2 or 3 rungs deeper and you say, now you need to understand also that there's a correlation between your child's performance in Section 8 versus your child's performance in single-family home ownership and your child's performance, and I'm telling you, there's ways to show that to where they own it.
The only thing that I would add is that if you're not willing to take that step, then I wouldn't waste their time with getting reports together.
Exactly right.
So if you're not willing to take the steps and add the layers to say, now we need to talk about how we can help your students' performance get better.
Yes, sir.
Or how we can put you in the mechanics class so that you
Yes,
can
sir.
get a better job and and move yourself to a better place. Then
Yes, sir.
it's kind of a futile effort.
It's a moot point to have that. Yes, sir.
Why ask them to go do it if we're not going to use it?
No, and I just think that we're having the first of a number. I mean, this is only our second workshop, right? And I think we're starting to scratch it a little bit. We got to watch her. She wants to tell us about 31 different loan programs and every different lending institution out there known to man. I just want to know, like, how many people we got living in a house and how can we get a couple more done. But that's okay. I like more than less. But I think that this is moving it in the right direction. The beauty is we're all in the same box and we got finite resources to try to fix it.
And it's nice to know that you're not only working the program, you care about the clients that you work with. So that makes a lot of difference.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, ma'am, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you, Ms. Kathy.
The next part of this presentation is where we're talking about the single-family home availability. We can talk a little bit about the cost of the lots that were talked about, where there were challenges with providing affordable land. In this first slide, we just put together what information from the MLS, and please note that not all the information is available on MLS. You got Zillow, and you also have folks that are selling homes through social media only. It's a very different world these days, but I just felt like this would be a good bit of information. We looked at the number of homes sold up to the 175,000, and we kind of picked that because we felt like a workforce housing family might be able to afford a house that costs that much, and plus that, some of the single-family builders have told me that they're selling homes to our residents that are 165 or more, and they're qualifying for them. So either way, I just thought that this would be a good bit of information of what's been sold through the MLS and what's currently listed for single-family housing. So we can go to the next slide. Now, this is the information that you all had asked for a while back. We wanted to show you what our single-family residential permits and the trends that we have starting in the fiscal year 2011-2012. As you can see, the total number of residential permits has gone up threefold, and since the 2011-2012 fiscal year. And this will kind of correlate to one of your agenda items later, but the fact of the matter is that we have such an increase in the number of single-family homes that are going up that this is a good sign that we do have product out there to help with this effort that we're looking at, and that is to get the workforce into single-family homes. And on the second part of this, you can see where the areas where most of the homes are being built. And, of course, we've got, LaBelle and Port LaBelle as some of the higher ones, and then in Montura. Some of the land prices, I can't really say that they're necessarily the drivers to where these are occurring, because the typical land lot prices in Montura are $12,000 to $15,000. although the county has sold lots that for a little less than that. And in Port LaBelle, it's 7,500 to 8,500 is the typical amount for a lot there. And then I went into Wheeler Estates under Zillow just to see what those parcels are being sold for. And those are around 10,000 up to, they had one that was 24,000, which is interesting. I didn't even pull anything from Banyan Village because I know that even though they're being listed for $5,000, the reality of that
Taxes more than
actually happening was not worth
Margaret.
the information.
Margaret, where'd you get that number, 186? And you got LaBelle, and that none of this includes the city of LaBelle.
That's correct.
So is that just around the city of LaBelle?
Right. That's the general north, Fort Denode, south, and it would include Case and Evans down in that area, but it's really around the west.
But not
and north.
city of LaBelle.
Correct.
Right.
Is the same hold true for Clewiston? So that's not city of Clewiston, but that's Hooker's Point.
These are all unincorporated.
I got you. Okay.
Okay.
So you,
Perfect.
so you add the two cities in there.
Yeah, right. It's not even reflected in that. Yeah.
Please make sure to remember this data point is from October 1st, 2011 up to present April 4th, 2018.
It's
So
6 months.
So we're not talking, well, it's
6
2011
years.
to
It's been
2018.
6 years.
Right.
So it does look a little swollen if you're thinking about it being an annualized number, but it's
Right.
over a 6-year period.
Right.
Yeah, when you look
But-
at 17 and 18, then
Yes.
it's different.
Well, and we're only midpoint at
Yeah.
17,
Right.
18, so it's going to be a lot
Should,
better.
should
And then-
double
Yeah.
that.
Right, and that's why I was saying last year and this year are 3 times as many as we had.
To be very honest with the board, their average monthly intake over the prior 3 years was about $6,800 to $7,200 a month. They're now averaging anywhere between $20,000 to $21,000 a month.
And that includes permit fees and inspection fees.
How hard is it for you to get this same data point from the cities?
She's right back there.
Uh,
They'll get
For both cities?
Well, we can get that. Do you want us to just email it to you all, or,
That's okay.
okay? All right.
Got a verbal one from I can't remember.
All right, we'll do that.
If you looked at this for Lee County and Collier County, it would,
Oh.
it would make your head spin.
But it's nothing. It's nothing compared to this.
Right.
You mean that small? Yeah.
The number's small.
The next part of this was, there was questions on the availability of utilities. The next few slides just,
Look, let me ask you one question, Ms.
Yes.
Embledge. If today, well, first off, the question I have, how difficult is it to generate a report that shows us in 17, 18,
yes,
that just the 43 and the 72, what that 43 generated and what that 72 generated?
Generating what, in permit fees?
Yes.
oh, right, and the valuations and the permit fees?
Number one.
Yes.
Number two, then could we correlate that and back into it and just times it by 355 and 263? And then a 3-year rolling average of.
Oh, you're getting into the Barney calculator things that I
That's
have a
exactly
hard
right.
time with.
But this is where the rubber meets the road as it relates to what do we want the future of Hendry County to look like and how do we entice that?
Mm-hmm.
And so now, in 5 years, so 2023, the 43 mobile homes that were installed, what are they generating?
Right,
Versus what are the 72 homes
right,
that were installed? What are they generating?
right. And we started to pull some of that information together. And anecdotally, what I can tell you now is that we were surprised to see that the modular homes and even some of the mobile homes actually retained their value more than what we expected. I'm not saying it's as much, but it
Yeah.
was more than we expected. But we'll pull that information
I did
together
the same
so you
thing
can
too,
do
Ms.
that.
Emmons, and I was shocked as well. And I was
Yes.
stunned to see what they actually generated in taxing revenue versus what I anticipated they
Yes.
would.
But what
Right.
they're doing, they're building as big as they can, big double wides Where you could almost go out and build a house.
And I think they're better built too, so the value doesn't depreciate as fast.
No, you got 2x6 walls. You actually have trusses in them, and the biggest thing here you got to understand, you put a $175,000 price tag up there. In a mobile home, they can be in that mobile home in a matter of months
Versus.
for less than half the cost.
Exactly right.
Way less than half the cost. So you got to understand. I mean, a $175,000 home, that's a lot of money. Especially, most of our employees couldn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reality. So
They could
those are
do.
things we have to keep in mind. And in a mobile home, no, they couldn't. No.
They'd have to have SHIP or CDBG.
Yeah, they'd have to. I mean, that's just, and it's bad that it's that way, but that's the reality. So, I mean, a mobile home, they're not mobile homes no more. They're built better than a lot of site-built homes.
Right, and that's why it's, the modular home is the, mobile homes, basically
Well, they don't
mobile
call them
homes.
that no more, I know.
Weren't, they weren't made anymore, but basically, we do have two different types of manufactured homes. One of them is still considered portable, and another one is permanent, and the ones you're talking about, Commissioner Wills, are the permanent ones.
Yeah, we have pre-Andrew and post-Andrew.
No, anymore,
That's-
they're building them
no.
all the same. They're not, you
Right.
take the axles and the tongue off, and it's not portable anymore.
Right, and that's why we're differentiating.
Or
in
pre-Wilma, yeah.
What we're looking at is the portable would be treated differently than the actual permanent. And the permanent's looked at as site-built homes. And
Okay.
that's one of the things we're going to be talking about, is to look at some consistent design standards so that we can ensure retaining values, whether it's a modular or a site-built home.
Then the big thing, one of the big things, location,
And,
where you locate them.
right. Well, the portable ones or the mobile home ones are going to be primarily in parks, but we also do have some areas that we know that we talked about last year where have mobile homes that are going in there, and at this point in time, we're not proposing to change what we have on the books per se, that you're allowed to have. We have zoning categories that have an M after it that allows for the mobile homes, and but we'll be hitting a lot of that in the next few months.
Another thing to keep in mind is, I mean, I saw many of those that maybe lost some skirting. And then if you talk to the locals, the gentlemen in Clewiston and LaBelle, they weren't even tied down. They didn't move. So it's going to be hard to sell somebody a $175,000 home when you can be in there in 3 months for 80, maybe 80. And that's a big home, 80,000. So.
Right. Well, we can pull together those numbers. I mean, that was going to be one of our next steps, was to
Yes, ma'am.
get those comparisons, because we need to have in the comparisons with the smaller homes, that
Right.
not tiny homes, because tiny homes truly are. Those are the little trailer type homes that.
You don't have enough information for modulars, do you? You don't have that many where you could compare them to the mobiles and the homes?
We do have
Okay.
some, and
So can you throw that in on your figures?
absolutely, that's the plan, sir. Okay, so the next few slides are the service areas for Comcast, CenturyLink, and the electric service providers. This isn't necessarily something, I don't know if you want to discuss it, but I just wanted to bring it together on those types of utilities, availability, and where they are. I think really the discussion that we wanted to have was, this has to do with affordability, is where it comes to water and sewer services. And what we have on this first slide here is to talk about that in, for example, in Port LaBelle and Banyan Village, we all know that there's water available, but the sewer is only available in certain parts of Port LaBelle. And in order to expand the service area, can you go to the next slide real quick? This is the map that shows where the existing sewer system is. In order to extend those areas and expand the service, it requires a 33% density within a particular area. So in other words, this one neighborhood that doesn't have anything in it, you
has
have
to become
to
a third
have
full.
33% full before they would consider extending it. Now, I realize that makes business sense for that business, for them.
No, it doesn't make sense from a development standpoint. You're
But
not
it-
going to have anybody incentivized to go there if you
Well,
don't
and
have
that's
that
why
already
we're
there.
going to have well and septic.
Yeah.
And then you have the well and septic,
Till
which
33% get built, and then we got to do away with that and hook up to a sewer.
they'll have to come through and they'll have to pay an assessment to hook up to the water and public water and sewer. But
So, Ms.
that's,
English, is jumping ahead, are you telling us that we should really look at making that a legislative ask and helping expand that process?
I think that the water and sewer, public water and sewer is one of our biggest priorities that we need to
Everywhere.
pursue.
If you don't have the infrastructure, they're not going to build it. If we get the infrastructure, it's going to be more popular to build at.
I say all the time, if you compare Hendry County to Okeechobee County, or if you compare, and I apologize, I don't do this, but I say if you compare Clueston to Okeechobee, that's why Okeechobee has experienced such a greater percentage of growth and captured their incomes, is because their infrastructure is already there, Ms. Bird. It's already there. You can go scrape off dirt, tie in, and be done.
So just to play off of the legislative ask piece is, for several years now, we were looking for a legislative appropriation for free money to run a sewer line from Clueston Wastewater Treatment Plant out to Everglades Airport.
Yeah.
What we found is that we're not getting past the veto pin because of several reasons. One being is that we didn't have shovel-ready plans. Another was we didn't have the right-of-way secured. And all those things were part of the learning curve, and we've corrected those mistakes. But what we found out now is that there is the state revolving fund. There are several other half grant, half loans, 80-20, 70-30 mixes that we qualify for. And what we were being consistently told by state of Florida staff, particularly in DEP and DEO, is that we need to be prepared to look at taking out debt to be able to put this type of infrastructure in. So I want to be very honest with the board and set expectations that line item appropriations for infrastructure funds may not be the best strategy moving forward.
This just sits so uncomfortable with me, though. You know, when I see 980 grand getting spent in the Pahokee Marina, you know,
Yeah.
as they've already spent 23 million plus 5 million plus, you know, and I can keep going on. And now we're asking for a pittance in the grand scheme of things, so that you can scrape a piece of dirt. And for, as y'all well know, I mean, I've been the main one leading the charge of saying, let's don't ask for 3 things. Let's don't ask for 5 things. Let's ask for 1. Put all our eggs in one basket and see if we can do it. And you know, we can't get the juice behind that. That's disturbing. But I'm ready to go that route. I'm ready to go sit with DEP and say, give us the SRF, State Revolving Fund. It's $26,000 a year. We can delay, we can defer, whatever they call that neat phrase, and you know, we can see what happens.
So that's all the dark green.
Dark green is where the sewer is.
Right now.
Like it's touching to that other big area, and they couldn't run it over there?
Well, I'm sure they could, but that's not part of the plan, and as you know, things aren't that easy. But
It's expensive doing it, that's all it is, right?
you know,
Because they're butted right up against it.
You can
right.
tie into it, but you
That's
just got to
what I
pay
meant.
for it.
yeah.
You have a little bit of competing interests too, and I just want to finish the note on the legislative side of it is there has been incentivized projects going into some of our neighbors on the East Coast looking at septic to sewer conversions that their independent jurisdictions have turned down those opportunities that were highly subsidized by state funds. Within the next few months, as the state legislature gets into committee weeks, this may be something we really want to cue off of and say, look, we want to be involved with the septic to sewer conversions. We want to see infrastructure invested. Where these folks have turned down your incentivized opportunities, would you take a look at us and make us a candidate for these projects as well?
And
I
this
just
would
want
be
to
a
prepare.
prime example.
I just want to prepare the board that there may be a 10% or a 20% match on the money that comes with it, or it may be some sort of a loan piece that comes with it. But I just want to make sure I manage the expectations. That is a conversation we are monitoring.
My personal expectation is, let's put all cards on the table, and let's not rule anything out. I think we should engage legislative appropriations, and we should look at all those as options. I think this is a prime example of everything that we need to do wrapped into one. Whether it be 1, 2, or 3 ask or whatever it is, this absolutely has to rise to the top.
Because we're not moving. We still in the same spot.
Is everyone in Harlem on sewer, or they have septic?
We have sewer.
You have sewer.
We tied in.
Yes, ma'am.
Y'all tied in with the city?
And see, and I think to that, you know, I think you take this area, Miss Emblidge, and then you take Hooker's Point going east out of you know, directly out of and you try to tie, and those are 2 big victories. Then you turn right back around and you go west as the crow flies. But I think that you're exactly right, Charles. I think that we need to be looking at that. Also, with the crazy concept of one thing that was thrown in our face was that if we give you, Hendry County, the ability to have expansion on your sewer line, then the city of Clueston is not prepared to accept any more capacity. So which comes first, chicken or the egg? And so, I don't know how we queue up that request.
The city of Clueston is pursuing some remedial funds for some repairs that need to be made to their wastewater treatment plant today. We've got another grant that we're working on through the United States Economic Development Agency that would address the rehabilitation piece of it in totality, the expansion piece to the wastewater treatment plant, and fund the sewer line being extended out to Everglades. It's a very healthy conversation that we're having. Ms. Jennifer Davis has been on point with Greg Viday with the USEDA. That total grant is looking at $11.2 million, and it would be everything from soup to nuts to run the line out from the wastewater treatment plant.
And when you run lines, we'll be able to handle it.
With the wastewater treatment, yes, sir. It would have the capacity at that time, including the lift stations to push the effluent.
Yeah, all in that one grant. Yeah.
We are in process with Johnson Engineering to secure the right-of-way easements. Those discussions are happening actively. So everything is coming together on that particular piece to get capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. The next logical step, of course, then is to see and where it makes sense for us to partner with the city of Clueston to expand their sewer lines out to the unincorporated, underserved area.
Keep in mind another thing, hate to be the fly in the milk here, but reality is a lot of these homes being built in Port LaBelle now, they're being built with a well and a sewer. Okay, so you're spending average $4,000 for a well. You're spending average $75,000 to $10,000 for a septic system. So let's just throw 10 years out there. We come in there and tell them, all right, you can't use your well and your septic no more.
Right.
And we're going to charge you by that time $7,500 to hook up to it. They're going to say, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And if I was living there, I'd be the one sitting there saying, no, you're not. My well
crazy.
works great.
Get out my pocket.
septic tank works great.
That's what this
Move on down, talk to the next neighbor. So those are things, if we're going to if you want the infrastructure, we need to start working on it now.
Yes,
we don't
sir.
need to wait till everybody's built their homes, they're already settled, and then try to come in and throw that's just not going to fly.
With 33% saturation, and
At that point, yeah.
Right.
the first 33% is going to be honked off.
Absolutely.
You're right.
I do it
And I
right-
wouldn't blame them. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be
Do it
sitting
right
there
the first
screaming
time.
at you too. So,
You just have to make all the new ones.
well, you going to give them their $7,500?
Once again, Commissioner Wills, I think that this is why we're proactively having this conversation. And Ms. Emblish, this is something that I've never seen this map. And I didn't know that they had that 33% rule before they would, even move towards the hookup.
Right.
That seems a bit asinine to me. I mean, I would have a detailed bullseye of this is where we want to go next, this is where we want to go next, and have that build out availability ready right now, but maybe they're operating on a knife's edge.
They're operating on money, and they're not going to do it. They got enough people to pay for
Saturate
it.
and be
Right.
done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not going to do it on
That and where they're building, they're just grabbing the cheapest lots.
Yeah.
The builders that are building out there, they're grabbing the cheapest lot they can. They're building them. They're building nice homes.
Yeah,
But obviously, if you can buy a lot for $5,000, why would you buy one for 10?
absolutely.
But that go right back to putting the Band-Aid on it, then you gotta
Sure.
come back and redo it all over
That's-
again.
that's exactly
When
what
we
I'm
just need to
And
get
you'll
the
have an army of
infrastructure-
humans in here
Right. Get the
that will be
infrastructure
working
started
against
the
our
right
legislative
way.
ask.
We really need to try to get it done the right way so we don't.
Glad you guys got $1 million
backtrack
from the state of
ourselves.
Florida. We don't want you to take it.
One thing that might be able to take the burden off of the taxpayer is to follow up to those public-private partnership conversations that we had when we were in Tallahassee. And I know it's still a very new concept to everybody, and there's a lot more education that has to be involved with it, but there's a growing interest in putting the risk on the back of the private partner, where they finance it, they build it, they then operate and get a concessions agreement of the utility bill over a period of time. That is worked out with the public partner in terms of the right-of-way. This may be a way that, if legislative asks do not work out for us, but to quickly get into the game of hitting these nodes with the risk being on the back of the private developer to get this job done as fast as possible.
Well, most communities, when they start to build them out, exactly what you hear. They're making them. If the developer's going to come in, you're going to develop a certain amount of homes. They have to put the infrastructure in for that. In our situation, we just don't have the infrastructure. We need the infrastructure.
Well, and we don't have developers doing large development
Well, not
either.
here,
We've
no.
got individual.
Right.
But they're
Builders.
spending $11,000 more than they're paying for the lot.
Can we, not to No, great conversation. We've only got a couple minutes, and I would love to hear the wrap-up next steps. Can you?
The back page. Yeah.
Yes.
Would you go over those with us, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the first one is the public-private partnerships, and I think Charles can speak more to that because he's really gotten into that already, but that is one of our priorities to help make some of these improvements or infrastructure programs work.
Just real short and sweet is the fact that this board does not have the tolerance to go to 10 mils to be able to leverage 1.5 mils in bondability to potentially generate a project like this from a typical bond financing scenario. So
No, we're
legislative
going to lower the
appropriation-
millage 1 mil this year.
The legislative appropriation process, grants, those methodologies would be available to us in traditional fashion. However, I would like for us to explore the P3 or P4 models and see if there's a way that we can incentivize a private developer to take the risk, run the sewer lines, and then get a portion of the utility fee on a monthly basis to make back their investment over, say, a 30 or 40-year period. That's one option I've got our lobby team looking at potential contractors that may be interested in this. Where have they done this? Where has it been successful? What does that look like? Show me the product, show me the communities, et cetera. So we'll build that information file and bring that to you.
Again, my comment was everything should be on the table. The legislative appropriation, P3s, and everything. I would love to see what it would look like.
And unique things that have never been done before, like what I keep saying is taking our Block O properties and getting, Clyde Johnson contracting, Pittman contracting, Beck, and name 3 others that are out there, and have them in a room and say, how do we skin this cat? How by the end of the 2019, 2020 fiscal, you guys are as busy as can be. But if this land were donated to you, legally given to you, and there was a buyback association, whatever, I don't know. But I'm telling you, there's a way out there to get to this, to where we're checking off 3 to 4 homes a year. And if they're in the right locale, there's other things that can be accomplished with it.
So how close do you have to be to the city to piggyback off of them or tie into them?
Well, within Port LaBelle, that we're within the service area, so it's our wastewater treatment area.
This way, you'd be better off.
You have to be within the city limits to use the city
But
of
what
LaBelle.
they do, they always annex you, so if you want to build something.
That would be determined by the capacity of your plants.
Yes.
That'd answer that question. Whatever
As soon as
capacities are in the-
when you work on public-private partnerships, you are talking about, can y'all also throw that Habitat Humanity concepts in there and give us a game plan on that one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's going to be.
And that's precisely what a P4 is. That's bringing public-private, but also then the not-for-profit community into that for the partnership, the P4 concept. I know it doesn't make sense. It's just a nomenclature.
All right.
So, and that kind of blends into the next one is the promote financial support from businesses, trusts, or developers. This, plays off of the idea of the Habitat for Humanity on their formula, but also on getting more support from the businesses on any of our programs that we need the dollars for. I mean, I think we all believe that, they need to put a little skin in the game on offering up the services that we're lacking, and because they benefit as well. And I know that Charles has been talking with some folks, including conversations with the EDC as well.
There's several different conversations happening on infrastructure in particular, but also to building consensus with the 2 cities that they would be partners at the table moving forward. We've had active conversations with the city of Clewiston over the last several years about the force main, which I mentioned earlier, but we haven't had that same kind of a robust conversation with the city of LaBelle to put together joint asks or joint studies to look at where does the city need to see sewer and infrastructure develop within its city limits, because I know there's needs within the city of LaBelle where there's areas that have no sewer capacity, and then what could we look at the next hot spot and how could we potentially help them to expand sewer and water infrastructure into those areas in advance of the next development wave.
Well, and I think you need to add one more variable in there, and that's the school board, Charles. And let me tell you why. I mean, I sat in an EDC meeting, I don't know how many weeks ago now, and I listened to the superintendent of schools tell about the fact that they're potentially going to be issuing an RFP or an RFQ to some entity about potentially building homes on acreage that is owned by either us
No, them.
or them
School.
that if it doesn't get utilized, it reverts back to the principal owner. He said that's the first I'm hearing of that, and I mean, I'm not upset. I'm just dumbfounded that I know my ear is low to the ground. I know we've been trying to skin this cat, and the main reason being is this. They need between what I've heard 20 to 25 teachers on each side of the county every year that have to have affordable housing or income-based housing.
Right.
And so that's where has been the genesis of this conversation for me more than anything is
Yes.
how do we get that essential service? Because it all ties back to education.
Mm-hmm.
Your economic prowess is directly correlated to your educational abilities or lack thereof. And so, I would love to know what they're doing, and then how can the county help with those efforts as well. I don't know how well that will be received. I'm not asking you to be a mole. I'm asking for transparency to reign supreme, and just see if they could bring us up to speed on what they are trying to do.
They do have acres in Porterville.
I can tell you that it's going to be, what they're working on now, we are vetting the RFQ, RFI, or RFP process, which one's going to be most palatable. And then secondly, right now, our focus is going to be more on rental, multifamily type housing, not single-family housing sales.
So they can come and go.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
On school board property. Now, that's the first layer, the first step one, first goal.
Yes, sir.
Because Lee's trying to do something.
Every district around us is working on it. Same
Walt
time.
Disney's already built, they have essentially dorm complexes as part of your package of employment.
Yeah.
There's other districts throughout the nation that have done the same thing.
And I think that the third bullet here is, we've already talked about this, looking at opportunities to work with the cities and expanding their facilities there. And then the next item is what was brought up earlier, is for us to disseminate the information that we've pulled together, not only today, but going forward, to all of the, I'll just call them at this point, any of the potential end users of these products for financing and opportunities for home ownership and the like. And then the last one that I have on here, which is something that I'm looking forward to bringing to the board this summer, is the residential design standards, so that we can maintain values and make sure that we've got our site built and permanent modulars so that they have the same requirements and they look alike, and make sure that we're keeping the
You're talking
values.
about building standards, not aesthetic standards, correct?
No, we're talking both.
Both.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
A pinwheel of colors. You can't have a hot pink house.
Oh, I thought we were going to allow that.
Absolutely not.
Oh,
Orange.
No.
darn.
Orange has got to be sharp. It's got to be like a burnt orange.
Anyway, but we'll be bringing that this summer to you all, and we are going to that once we have that package, we are going to send it out to various builders and contractors to get their input before we bring it to even the LPA. Okay, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Emlich. Thank you, Ms. Gadsden.